G'day, guys, and welcome to Beyond the Tape podcast, episode 3. This is quite a long one where we sit down with the marketing manager, sales guy, Jordo, and Hugh, the engineer of Craftworks Cycles, a local designed and engineered bike that has been making some waves over the last couple of years. They have definitely kind of progressed over the last kind of 6 to 8 months with Jordo coming on board, and I was really excited to sit down with these two guys because, you know, they're really good mates of mine. They know what's going on and they're super switched on. Now, throughout the episode, you're going to notice or hear a couple of bottles getting opened and closed and us drinking a few. Now, what we're drinking is a few beers from Sweet Amber Brewery. They absolutely killed it with these beers. They don't go crazy with, you know, Tibetan hops mixed with strawberry milkshakes from American diners and the tears of a unicorn brewed in. They are just a good quality beer. Go down smoothly and are very sessionable with a few mates, as you can tell with us, because we definitely go through a couple of bottles. They offer 1 litre bottles coming out of their brewery. They do delivery, and they've got a sweet little pizza bar down on Semaphore Road in Adelaide with a really chill vibe and great food. Please just head down there or grab a beer and let us know how you feel about it. And yeah, really thankful for those guys for hooking us up with a couple of beers in this episode. It was a long one, and we definitely needed the hydration. So we go through a fair bit. We go through their company, we go through where they come from, and the engineering of the bike. It's quite a complex bike, but with a simple theory behind it, and Hugh explains it much better than whatever I could. I did have the opportunity to demo one of these things, and I give my kind of opinion along with a bit of news at the end of the episode in the outro. So it's probably a bit late now, but if you can, grab a Sweet Amber beer or the beer of your choice, a tea, a coffee, cough syrup, whatever you need to relax and listen in on the episode. Please make sure that you leave a review on iTunes or let me know on Instagram how this is all going. And I'm entirely grateful to everyone that has listened and has given me the positive feedback, which I'm quite surprised by. So again, please leave back or get in contact with any feedback. Enjoy the episode that's coming up, and I look forward to hearing from you about this one. And the next few guests that are coming up after this are quite big, and I'm looking forward to it. So enjoy. Well, welcome to the podcast, I guess. We'll start it with that.
Cheers.
Thanks for having us.
That's all right. Do you guys want to just give us a little bit of an insight into who you are, where you're from, and kind of how you've got to where you are, I guess, starting with one of you?
Yeah. I can talk for a long time, so you perhaps better get your words in now.
I'm Hugh McLeay. I'm a co-owner of Craftworks, and I'm from Adelaide, and I'm a mountain biker, and I'm an engineer.
Rad.
My name's Jordan Roberts. I'm also a co-owner of Craftworks, and from Adelaide as well, originally from the country, I guess, but born and bred in SA, and ride bikes as well. It's I guess I've got more of a media and marketing background, which is how it all came to be.
And how did you guys get into mountain biking and so forth? Like, was it something you always been into, or?
I've been into it for, I guess since I was about 15 or something. Just through schoolmates, something to do on weekends, and getting into that. So that was started doing some downhill in the late 90s, and it's probably around that time Steve Marsh was winning downhill races, and I noticed that he was doing this other cool stuff on his bike,
Yeah.
trials, and then I sort of started hopping around on my bike and ended up doing trials for quite a few years. And then, you know, when I finished uni, at uni I'd done a bit of suspension stuff with motorsport. And then when I got back into mountain biking, I started downhilling again, and I was like, man, you know, I reckon I can do better suspension than what's on this bike. So sort of applied what I understood through vehicle dynamics and started working on bike suspension.
Yeah, right. So was that like car auto? Or?
So like Formula SAE, which is basically a university project where you can design and build a race car. So through doing that, I did a fair bit of reading on vehicle dynamics and found it really interesting. So that's sort of what gave me a good foundation to start looking at mountain bike suspension stuff.
Was it pretty hard to find a transfer of data or a transfer of suspension design at that point?
Not really. It was, you know, all the same principles apply. So, you know, we deal with gravity and mass and weight transfer. So it's all the same things. It's probably a bit easier in bikes because you're only doing in 2D rather than in 3D.
Yeah, true.
So, yeah.
Yeah, right. And how did you get into the sport, Jordo?
It's probably about the same age, I reckon. I grew up in a town a couple of hours it was a couple of hours north, but the roads keep getting better, so we're down to an hour and a quarter. I sort of I never really did the footy and cricket thing. I sort of liked all my limbs intact, which is funny that I ended up in mountain biking. But I was always a swimmer and always rode bikes, and there was kind of me and two other kids that I sort of grew up with. They were maybe a year or two younger than me, actually. And two of us had mountain bikes, and one of the other kids we just used to send down. He was always faster than us. We'd always send him down on his BMX, and he'd always beat us down. But there was kind of it was about. We're about the same age, so it was about the same time. And it was kind of one older guy who was sort of in that state, downhill sort of level, and he kind of took us out to Kersbrook a couple of times, actually. And,
right. Yep.
Yeah, we rode there a few times, and I look, I guess I've probably never been a fantastic rider, but always kind of like it was something that I knew I enjoyed and wanted to do and wanted to do better. And there's, maybe the progression was a little bit slower for me than for some people, but I just stuck to it. And I went away from it for a while and did a bit of track sprint stuff. Just ended up kite surfing and doing that sort of stuff, pretty much out of bikes almost altogether, and then sort of came crashing back in pretty quickly in the last, 7 or 8 years or something like that. And we sort of ended up teaming up almost accidentally, really. Yeah.
What was it like, riding with like people like Steve Marsh and that crew back in the day?
Riding trials with them? Yeah. That was trials is really good, actually. It's a really tight crew that we had, and it's the sort of thing, like at the time when I sort of stopped racing or was never very good at downhill, and I wanted to do trials to get better at downhill. That's initially why I got into it. But back then you could buy your $10,000 downhill bike and look the part and rock up to races and, do okay. Whereas with trials, if you can't do anything, you don't look the part. So it takes a lot of practice to, just to get the track stand and then start hopping and doing all these little moves, so you can't really showboat it. And so we had a really cool crew here in Adelaide. Marshy and Dazzle was kind of like, Dazzle was the godfather, and he would sort of every Tuesday would go around to his place and ride trials in his backyard. So
Was that Dazzle Land then?
Yeah. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's crazy that they're all still a good group and everyone's still riding together as well. I've heard they're all on e-bikes now, a few of them. So
Sellouts. I can't say that. They're faster than me by a long way. They're not sellouts. Maybe a little bit.
And so, during that time, have you seen bikes change a fair bit? I'm guessing since
definitely. We've seen all the head angle or the geometry changes. It's just crazy to look back at what people were racing aggressively on, and to even try and swing a leg over it now and find it comfortable and race hard would be so difficult. And I guess that kind of highlights that people are good at riding what they're used to in terms of geometry and sizing and that. So, we always think that the geometry and sizing we're riding now is the optimum, but you look back 10 years ago and see how vastly different it was, and it just makes you wonder what's it going to be like in 10 years' time. Are we going to? You can't just keep going slacker and slacker and longer. So, what's going to happen? Will we eventually find that sweet spot, or will we start going back? Or what?
I'm going to go back to like 650s or whatever. One day.
24-inch rear.
So, how did you guys kind of meet and get together involved in this? And
I think we met at the
Gravity
Fox Creek.
Gravity Enduro Nationals.
Yeah, that's right.
What year are we now? 2019. So it was 2017.
Yep.
Okay.
And I was an Ion retailer at the time.
Yep.
Sort of by virtue of Ion's kind of tied up with, or it's owned by the same company that owns one of the biggest kite surfing brand in the world, and I was a distributor for them and importer, I should say, rather. And so I had a few good riders kind of on the books, I guess, and I decided to put a stand up there, and Hugh and I kind of ended up next to each other, and we just got talking, because like any race, if you run a stand, it's a funny place to be supporting races. There's a lot of time sitting around waiting for people to come back into the village.
Yep.
And we just got talking, and I think we probably found a bit of common ground.
And I was at a place where, so previously in Craftworks, I had a previous business partner, and he'd been running the business for quite a long time before that, and he wanted to sort of move on and do other things. So, I got involved in Craftworks about 4 or 5 years ago, and since that time, around 2017, Kane wanted to move on and do other things, so he kind of handled the company over to me. So I was like, sweet, got my own bike company. And then I thought, hang on, I don't know anything about marketing or sales or whatever, so I was really on the lookout for someone to kind of complement the things that I was good at, which is more on the design and manufacturing side of things. So I knew that marketing was not my strong point, and there was Jordan set up in the tent next to me, mic in hand.
That's right. I was commentating.
I'm like, wow, this guy can talk.
I remember that. There was a lot of talking.
Oh, jeez.
So how long did it take after that initial meeting for you guys to really settle in and start what's happening now?
To be honest, it was a little while.
Yeah.
Because it probably actually...
the first couple of meetings, you were like, oh, shit, I totally forgot about that. Reschedule.
I forgot about that. It kind of blindsided me a little bit, because I had no idea that that's what you're on the lookout for, which is probably, I mean, when I think about your personality now, like, I'm not surprised at all that I didn't realise, because you are fairly understated, and And I think, you know, yeah, I think we caught up for a beer at the old, what was it, the Evoker or something? No, it wasn't the Evoker.
Yeah, it was Evoker.
It was Evoker, yeah.
Yep.
And, yeah, just kind of, yeah, had a bit of a chat. And I don't know, like I've run my own business for a long time in the past, and several times, I guess, I've got close to being, you know, I won't say partnership, but in cahoots with someone else, and it's usually ended up being red flagged at some point, you know, bad idea, and you know, for lots of reasons, and it's not that anyone did anything wrong in those instances or anything, but I think in this one, I was probably a little bit wary, and I think you were too, because you obviously had a lot of skin in the game at the time, and yeah, I think that it was good because we both kind of came at it from a, you know, I'm not sure if I want this, and then you were a bit like, I'm not sure if I want to give it to you, and you know, we sort of found some common ground pretty quickly, I think, in the scheme of things, and yeah, look, I don't know, maybe we should talk after this, but I think it's been going pretty well. I'm still here.
I'm not a counsellor, so it's not anymore. And it's been going smoothly since then. Like, it seems like it's definitely moving up, especially in marketing and so forth since the initial release. Or what's it like? I guess manufacturing one of these from the get-go as well.
I was pretty fortunate that my previous business partner lived and worked in Taiwan, so when I went over there to do the manufacturing of this first, or the V1, he basically sort of showed me the ropes of the factory, and you know, how to deal with the people there and all of that sort of thing. So that's really lucky to sort of have my hand held through that process, and yeah, so, and I guess coming from a, you know, technical background, you know, when I went over there this time to get these new ones done, I was sort of in my element when I'm there in the factory, and I knew the things I wanted to look out for, and so I went in with the mindset of whatever could go wrong would go wrong, and just made sure everything was right all the way through, and yeah, it's come out correct at the other end, which is always a relief.
I think it's definitely one of those things that you got to make sure everything's in place before. Have you guys had many hiccups or anything with March manufacturing? Or?
No, not.
I don't think we've had it. We haven't had a single warranty.
No,
not one with the ENR, which I think is probably, you know, it's probably a selection bias there because we're not pumping out thousands of frames.
Yeah.
But you know, there's a lot of bikes out there, and I guess, you know, prior to the ENR, Craftworks had a pretty reliable name in a lot of instances, and I mean they've been around since 96, so you know, you're bound to get, you know, one bike that was famous for cracking or something. Like everyone's had that nightmare in the bike industry, I think. But this one is just, you know, the things that even we thought, you know, the idler cog was a classic example.
Yeah,
you ran yours till it looked ragged as anything, and it just was faultless.
People are like, oh, that's going to wear out. And, you know, I put 1,600 Ks on mine, and, you know, the teeth started falling off, and it was still working. Like, it was still doing its job, but it's starting to get a little bit noisy. But I'm like, 1,600 Ks, that's pretty good, you know. And the chain was still good as well. So, you know, some people are like, oh, it's going to wear out the chain more, but I don't know, it's an alloy idler pulley, so the intent is that it's not going to damage your chain. If anything, the idler pulley is just going to wear out, and you need to buy a new one. So,
And how long does it take? I won't say from design, because design's been a while for this thing. So say you wanted to make these changes to kind of modernise the bike, how long would it take from design of that to getting one here?
It's probably like a 3-month lead time at the factory so if I had all my design and drawings all done and finished, you know, get in touch with the factory, see when they can do it. Probably depends on the time of year as well.
Yeah.
They have a cycle that, you know, because they manufacture for other brands as well. So they've got a cycle to work into. But, you know, roughly it's about a 3-month lead time and, you know, probably a couple of weeks for production.
Yeah, right.
Add a week before and after that for a bit of comfort. Maybe 2 months sea freight and they're here.
Yeah. That's not too bad at all, really. And how many frames roughly would you need minimum to be able to say, can you make these? Or
we're pretty lucky that we can do smaller runs. I won't go into exact numbers, but a lot of brands sort of you know, limited to around 300 units. And then obviously bigger brands need more than that, so they're in a comfort zone. You know, we're doing smaller quantities, so things like the tubing and that we basically select off the shelf because to get custom tubing in custom lengths, and we're going to be doing much bigger numbers than we're actually doing. Yeah. But yeah.
So it's not that easy for you to prototype or do anything.
You know, if we've got a new model, we can get a sample made.
Yeah.
But the intent is then that we go into production with that model, so we can't just faff around with different getting different prototypes made just for the hell of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
you've done a lot of prototyping over the years.
Yeah, I mean
as well. I mean it's been a 10-year.
Yeah.
At least.
Like when I first came up with the iTrack suspension concept, I was living in Sydney at the time and came up with this idea, and then because I, you know, we're living in a small apartment, I didn't have access to my shed or anything. I was like, all right, I better work on the theory rather than knocking up a prototype. So got into that and thought it had some merit, so decided to patent that, and that took a lot of time and money to get all that done. But then once that was sort of all sorted and we moved back to Adelaide, I was like, right, theory's all done and tucked away. Let's see if it actually works.
Yeah.
And basically a couple of YouTube videos, taught myself how to weld and bought some chromoly tubing, and away you go.
That sounds so crude.
I think we all saw that, or anyone in Adelaide saw that old, I think it was a P1 frame with a bit of a crude. Do you still have that bike?
Yeah, it's hanging up in my shed. Yeah, big single pivot swing arm at the back. Yeah, it's but it was cool because you know, it's the first bike I've ever made, and it worked, and but B, it was like my own sort of unique suspension design and proof of concept, and that worked as well. And the whole idea is that, you know, to make long travel bikes pedal better.
Yeah.
And so that's why I started on downhill bikes, because they got the most travel, and if it's going to work, it's going to work best on a downhill bike. So I took, you know, I did that P1 prototype, and then after that I did a P2, which was a 4-bar linkage, similar kind of thing to the ENR, and took those bikes to Interbike in the States in 2016, I reckon. No, 15 maybe.
Yeah, I would have thought it'd be
15, maybe even earlier, 13. I don't know. Can't remember. But yeah, that's when enduro was getting big. Everyone's like, "Oh man, downhill's dead. You know, you need to be making an enduro bike." I'm like, "Yeah, this is just proof of concept, but point taken."
Yep.
So after that, came back and then built P3, which is an enduro bike, which is basically what the ENR is now.
Yeah. And I guess, how long did it take to get from that P3 to the first, like, because I saw there was a prototype of these as well?
Yeah. So that was before I was involved in Craftworks. So basically I'd come up with P3, and, you know, it's all green, and it's basically an iTrack bike.
Yeah.
And my intent was always to find a brand to just license it to. So, you know, I could stop working and just take, you know, cash in and And
do what Dave Weagle's doing.
No.
and well, not surprisingly, really, but I'd made a few contacts in the industry, and through going to Interbike and reaching out to all these brands now, saying, hey, here's my suspension design. Do you want to license it?
Yeah.
And it's pretty quiet on the other end. So I thought, right, I've got to get more people riding this thing so people can understand what it's about and how it works and that sort of thing. So that's when I started talking to Kane, who was the owner of Craftworks at the time, mainly to say, how do I go about getting a run of frames done? I want to make a heap of bikes and get people riding them. And we started talking through the process, and he's like, well, why don't you just do it under the Craftworks banner, become part of Craftworks, and then you can design and make whatever you want.
Yeah.
And I thought that sounded like a pretty cool deal. So, the rest is history, really.
And what makes this design work so well, or what's different?
I guess, so the main thing is basically it uses a floating idler pulley. And from the design perspective, what that does is it really gives the designer a lot more flexibility in tuning the axle path and the way it pedals, like the anti-squat. So on a conventional drivetrain bike, basically the axle path determines how the bike's going to pedal. And we've seen all these sorts of suspension systems that have different links in different places, and all that does is it controls how the axle moves through travel to produce a particular way of pedaling. And so I wanted to decouple that axle path from being able to tune how the bike pedals, and pretty early on recognised that the chain growth is really what determines how the bike pedals. So I thought, how am I going to independently tune the chain growth from how the axle moves? And so that's where the idler pulley comes in, and having the idler pulley on a separate member so that it moves relative to the bottom bracket and moves relative to the rear axle, which are the other two chain contact points.
Yeah.
It gives me, the designer, a lot of freedom to kind of tune the axle path and the anti-squat separately. And I was really inspired a long time, I suppose it was a long time ago, by those early high pivot bikes that had a more rearward axle path. So that's what I wanted to do, to have a suspension design that could really absorb those frontal impacts and still have a nice firm platform for pumping and cornering and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's my implementation of iTrack, the rearward axle path. But in theory, the design could be used for any sort of axle path, and it just gives the designer flexibility of tuning axle path and pedaling performance.
Yeah, right. Does the anti-squat change through the point of travel? So
yeah, it does. Deliberately, because basically the way the anti-squat changes through travel affects the wheel rate. So when you're pedaling, basically if anti-squat increases through travel, which is what I do on these bikes, it gives, when you're accelerating, you got weight transfer, more mass on the back wheel. So it would normally be a lower wheel rate and feel a bit saggy.
Yeah.
But having anti-squat increase with travel stiffens it up again. So basically it means the bike's got a more stable natural frequency, whether you're just coasting and pumping or whether you're accelerating, it's still got the same sort of natural frequency, which makes it feel a lot more natural, even though there's a lot going on. But for the rider, it feels just like comfortable, and it just feels like it works.
And why is the rearward axle path such a big thing?
It's to do with like frontal impacts, or basically separating the terrain inputs, which is basically when a rock hits your wheel, it doesn't hit it like right on the underside of the wheel, hits it on the front of the wheel.
Okay.
Compared to like when you're pumping or cornering or whatever, the ground's usually on the bottom of the wheel. So
Yes. Yep.
So when you're pumping and cornering, it's pretty much vertical forces going through the suspension.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when you're hitting rocks and roots and that, it's more rearward forces. So, you know, isn't it amazing that when you can actually design the axle to move backwards. So when you're hitting those rocks, it's a softer spring rate compared to when you're pumping and cornering, which is when you want the bike to feel firm, so your energy's not wasted.
Yeah, that makes sense, I guess. How hard was it for you, Jordo, to kind of comprehend all that and come into the company and turn that around?
I don't know. There's probably a couple of aspects here. I think the first is that I'm genuinely a closet nerd, which I think we probably learned a lot about each other on the demo tour when we were stuck in a car for long periods of time. And look, for me, I don't know. Like I do not have a mathematical bone in my body, but I do have a very. I think I've got a really good conceptual understanding of, particularly mechanical stuff. Like I can visualize things and I can completely understand. When somebody who has very good technical understanding, like you, is explaining things to me, I can definitely grasp those concepts. And I guess, for me, I mean, the proof was in the pudding for me. Hugh told me what this bike was about. He told me what it should be able to do and what it can do. And I thought, well, before I go, jumping in on this business, I probably should ride one. In fact, I think they were in my exact words. And and then I think my text to you shortly after was, "You've created a monster." And it was like, I think on my first ride out on a demo bike, which just had everything different to what I was used to. I felt faster and I felt more comfortable and I felt, I guess the one of the bits of feedback we get from a lot of riders, which really resonates with me because it's the first thing I noticed, was that this thing is just so smooth around those, particularly kind of rocky or rooty, corners, and it just accelerates. And you almost, like, the first couple of times you go into a section like that, you're not ready for it, and you come out of it, and it's not a, like, particularly if you've come into one of those, those super rough sections where you think, like, you kind of almost tense up because you're like, oh man, I'm actually going to die here. And then you get to the other side of it, and it's not a case of, oh, I made it. It's actually like, that was actually pretty easy. I reckon I can actually hit that next time. Yeah. With confidence. And it does, it accelerates through things. It stabilizes when you think it's going to get hectic, and it just inspires confidence. And so I guess, to go back to your question, how easy was it for me to kind of fall into the groove? I guess it was pretty easy because the bike did exactly what Hugh said it was going to do, and my limited knowledge of the guy, I guess, prior to this, meant that it was doing exactly what he designed it to do. So, I kind of came out of it with this overwhelming sense of, man, the world needs to see this thing, like, and so, all a bloke like me needs is a good story, or is a good product. I'll come up with the story. So, yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and I guess my mantra in life is that I'm only going to sell or market things that I believe in, and I've been lucky in that I've been able to do that. I've worked for some good companies and had some really good brands under my own businesses and whatnot, and this is just an extension to that. It makes sense. The funny thing I've noticed is I see, I look around and I see bikes with a standard chain line, and I just think, oh man, it just looks weird now. it's just so not exciting. I guess
I'm a bit like that. Anytime, Instagram is like, you see something new bike, I go straight to the chain line. No.
Not interested.
Not interested. Just
yeah. So it's a lot of fun for me, and like, I guess there's probably not too many better things in life than doing something you love for a living. So it's it's a pretty good thing to be a part of.
Yeah, sick.
Could be in an office.
That's a lot less. Sick. And so I guess that makes it a lot. You touched on it. Then makes it a lot easier for you to market and promote these things because you believe in them so well and they just work. So
yeah, and I think we did a little bit of soul searching is probably not the right word, but I guess trying to, we tested a few things in terms of marketing to work out. Like, I think one of the first things we did was supported a local gravity enduro. Like, the first things we did together, I guess, we supported a local gravity enduro, and it was just, I think, while we were packing up, we were both sort of saying, and this isn't to detract anything from the gravity enduro crew. They run a great event, but marketing around races is probably not real great for us. People aren't in a mindset where they're open to things. They're flat out trying to dial in their suspension and get ready for a big day of racing, and they're not getting caught up having conversations about how a new suspension system works. The last thing they need in their mind is a seed of doubt that their $8,000 carbon bike is maybe not all it's cracked up to be. I guess following that, we kind of changed our tack a little bit and thought, well, this bike was built to be an enduro race bike, but actually, some of the things, like its pedal efficiency, its confidence inspiring nature and all these sorts of things actually make it the perfect bike for the every rider, and they make it the perfect bike for mums and dads. That make it the perfect bike for kids who maybe don't want to drop 10 grand on a carbon bike but actually want to be competitive with one that their mate's got. And so we kind of started taking it to more or less race orientated things. Went up to Melrose and I literally lost I could have been the bottle of scotch, but I lost my voice by the end of Melrose because I was just telling the story so much, and we had a bloody great time up there, and then I did the tour down under Makers Market and things like that, and that was great because it was again, it was a little bit different. We were the only mountain bike related business there, and just got so much good feedback. Like not one bit of negative feedback the whole time. And the great thing about this bike we started noticing was that when you put people on it, they just get it. They go out and they ride it and they come back and they're like, oh my God, this is my next bike. And that's just like, if we had $1 for every time somebody said that, we wouldn't have to sell bikes. But so we went and did the demo tour and people came out for that, and I'm sort of a fair believer in that you really got to get out of your own town, and I think a lot of people in Adelaide, I love Adelaide. I got a lot of mates here, and they love to see you succeed. They're not going to buy your bike, but they'd love to see you succeed, kind of thing. And there's a bit of that going on. And
I think it's also that Craftworks is kind of Adelaide born and bred.
Yeah.
And people maybe take it for granted as they've been around at every race or whatever.
Yeah.
See them around all the time since the late 90s. And whereas when you go into state, people are like, oh, Craftworks, wow, cool.
Yeah.
So it's
and it's not kind of
easier when we go into state.
Yeah. It's not dissing the local population in any way, shape or form. I think it just is that Adelaide's like it's a super conservative place. But for 50 years, people have been testing products in Adelaide, because if you can make it work in Adelaide, it'll work anywhere. And like countless. I remember being at uni and just being like, oh my god, so many chocolate bars have been tested on Adelaide. Caffeinated bloody chocolate bars and all kinds of stuff. And, if you go to Melbourne, 5 years later and you see them there, it's because it worked in Adelaide.
Yeah.
And it's a fair slog in some respects in Adelaide for us. But I guess the flip side is we hear a lot too, and so we really just go riding and just try to get people on the bike. And that's why I think the demo tour worked so well. I love it and it always surprises me when I hear someone say, oh, I've been following you guys on Instagram, or something like that. And I think, like for a marketer, it's probably the equivalent of someone saying, oh, I just won a World Cup on your bike. I'm like, it's working, So yeah, it's definitely, I guess it's, it's kind of crunch time, but you got all these ideas that you develop as a marketer over, I don't know, when I finished uni, it's, getting close on 20 years, and all of a sudden I've got to test a lot of them over the years, and I've not only got to test them this time, but they've got to work.
Yeah.
And so there's a bit more thought being put into it, and not everything works, but I'm pretty stoked to say, people are taking notice, and they're asking questions, and it's not always easy for us to get one into people's hands, because maybe we get a lot of questions from Europe, and there's that obviously comes with its challenges, but certainly whenever we can, we get people on demo bikes, and it pays off, for us. But I don't want to make that sound like we're stuffing bikes down people's throats, because we don't force the sales thing. They choose it themselves at the end. We just try to get them on one so they can make their own mind up, really. Yeah,
for sure. You mentioned before, Hugh, about going through Instagram and seeing all the random chain lines and stuff.
Yeah.
How do you feel being like a local Adelaide builder and designer and whatnot, and then seeing the bigger companies are starting to catch on, so like Commissar and...
I love it, because it's the biggest challenge for me 5 years ago was the look of this sort of chain line, and that in my head, that was the biggest barrier to getting these bikes out there, was just the way they looked. And then to suddenly see other brands taking, because high pivots were done 10 years ago, and I don't know why they just didn't take off back then.
Yeah.
Maybe they were poorly implemented or whatever, but nowadays, people maybe know what they're doing a bit more with them. And to see them doing well in the World Cup is just awesome, because at the end of the day, it's all going to trickle down. It means more people are going to be accepting of this sort of look on a bike, and that's only going to help us, get these out there.
That brings me on to, how hard is it to balance the design or looks aspect compared to the performance aspect? I mean,
I was pretty, the appearance was pretty high on my list of things to get right, because of the time I was designing this, none of the high pivots were on the World Cup scene, and I knew I had to make it look as good as possible to even have a chance of getting it out there. And fortunately, I was able to do it within like the kinematics that I wanted as well. So basically, the way I wanted it to pedal, the axle path that I wanted, meant that all these pivots had to be in these certain spots, and then I was able to sort of fit the frame around it, and it all came together, and it looked pretty bloody good as well. So I was like, sweet, that works. And I guess there are quite a few packaging challenges to make sure things don't clash in suspension motion, but that's all just really a bit of an engineering challenge. And designing pivots and bearings that fit in the right places.
Yeah. And a couple of reports I've heard from riders that are on them is how kind of durable they are. Was that a big focus? Like, it's not the lightest bike in the world.
It's that's I guess more of a business decision to just go safe on some of the wall thicknesses and that sort of thing, because we're a small business and we just cannot afford to have bikes that break. So it was definitely a business decision to go safe on that side of things. And look, realistically, you're talking maybe 500 grams difference in a frame between going safe and going stupid. Probably not even that much, actually. And, in my mind, it's just not worth it.
Yeah. And I've got a pretty controversial view after riding a lot of e-bikes, and weight is not that big of a deal.
And a lot of people now, with tyres, people are going for the heavy, twin ply tyres or whatever, because it gives them the grip or the comfort over the rocks, knowing that you're not going to slash a sidewall, and you're prepared to carry the extra kilo on the bike to get that.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, everyone could lose could afford to lose a couple of kilos off the waistline. So what's the big deal of having a couple of kilos on your bike?
Yeah, exactly.
I think also like so much of that that weight thing is kind of centered around climbing ability and performance in the air and all that sort of stuff. And it's like, well, I mean, this is a 160 bike that pedals probably more like a 100mm bike. In so many senses, it pumps like nothing on earth. It's got a high bottom bracket on paper, but the weight is quite low, and so it's super stable in the air.
Yeah.
So if that weight's in the right place, an extra few grams here or there, it's just not a thing. And again, like I put anyone on it any day of the week, and comfortably confident that they would not have an issue with the weight of it.
Yeah.
They might not want an alloy bike, for example, but I would, I'd be very surprised if anyone actually felt that it was too heavy to ride.
Yeah. I couldn't see any issues with that. And it's funny that you mentioned about wanting an alloy or carbon, but if you look at guys like Josh Bryceland and that Cannondale crew, they're all riding alloy bikes now. It's like a big thing. So how did you go about deciding whether to go carbon or alloy? Or?
It wasn't really an option to go carbon. The tooling, the investment in tooling is too great for the quantities that we're doing. But we've considered trying some homemade, so to speak, carbon stuff, or at least locally made. I should say.
Cookies.
Yeah, but I reckon there's a bit of a swing back to alloy, like you mentioned. But it is scary to. I know the bike industry is a pretty small player in terms of the people that use carbon, like
compared to
aerospace.
Aerospace, yeah.
But it is literally a massive waste, and once it's made, you can't get rid of it. That's it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's people with like 3 or 4 old carbon bikes hanging up in their shed, and so what am I going to do with these things? Whereas at least with the alloy ones, you put them in a recycling bin and they get melted down and turned into Coke cans or whatever.
Yeah.
And they'll get another life. They might get turned into another bike. So, that takes a bit of energy, but it's not going into landfill, which is kind of disturbing.
Yeah.
It's funny, like, we were talking earlier about, the vegan train and things like that.
Yeah.
Oh, no, sorry, Cam. Cut.
Yeah.
No. But, in all seriousness, like, there's a lot of, I guess there's pretty interesting two sides to the bike industry in that there's these people who are, very serious about a cause, about what is ultimately an environmental cause, and yet, a lot of them are riding carbon bikes, and it's, it is what it is. I'm not certainly not bagging anyone out, but I guess there's talking the talk and there's walking the talk, and there's probably carbons on one side of that fence maybe. There's absolutely a place for it. It's sexy. It's aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah.
But like you say, there's that big swing back towards alloys. I think it's actually skipped alloy and gone right back to steel in a lot of cases. But
I mean,
so much
I wouldn't. We're not going to rule it out, but as well, the type of I'm not that great at maintaining my own bikes.
Yeah.
So
like every bike mechanic manufacturer ever.
And
it's pretty funny that my bike's always cleaner than his.
my daily commute is my old road bike, which has got carbon forks and carbon rear triangle on it, and what I thought was a carbon stem, and for like years it's stems creaking. I'm like, I should check this out one day. It's probably gonna let go at any moment.
Yep.
But all I ever do to that bike is lube the chain and pump the tires up, and the drivetrain's well gone, but I still ride it every day, and it's wicked. But finally the other day I thought I'd better check this stem out and just see that it's not half cracked through, and it's one of those, it's got a nice carbon weave on it and everything.
Yeah.
I was under the impression it was a carbon stem. I took it off. I've never been so happy to have alloy parts. So it's an alloy stem and bit of grease, quieten it down. It's all good. Now I feel confident in laying into it.
Another 10 years.
Yep. So if I had a carbon bike, I'd, when it's, within a year or two, you're pretty confident on it, knowing that it's a new product. But after a couple of years, you start to get that bit of doubt in the back of your mind, Is it as good as it was 2 years ago?
Oh,
and
sure.
you just don't know.
Yeah.
You can pay someone to check it out for you. But with an alloy bike, you just never have that question in your mind.
Yeah, you can see any damage or anything, it's going to be the same.
Yeah.
You also touched on before, Jordo, about
veganism.
No. The kind of getting away from race sponsorship and Instagram sponsorship and stuff, which again is something that Josh Bryce and that kind of crew are doing as well. Do you find that it's really the whole market starting to get away from that win on Sunday, buy on Monday type marketing? Or
that's a really hard question to answer, and I think part of it is that when you make a decision to go in a particular direction, you ultimately do it at the expense of the other direction, to some degree. Do we want people to race this bike? Hell yeah. Do we want people to win races on it? Hell yeah. But it's those five guys and girls who end up on a podium who are ultimately being paid for by everybody else in the industry who just wants to go out and, just by squinting a little bit, feel like they're hitting the corner as fast as Troy and Connor kind of thing. So, I genuinely believe, I think the market exists in that every rider, and I think it's probably been the success of things like e-bikes because it's brought a better caliber of riding within the realms of possibility to less capable riders, people with less time who can't do 5 hours a day on the bike because they've got families and whatnot, and so all of a sudden they're shredding corners on the way up and things like that. So I mean, I think to go back to your question, I think that shift, I guess bikes are such an inclusive thing, and governments are really trying to push cycling. We see that a lot because it has huge benefits for society. I think there's probably an understanding that that's an important thing. I don't know. I'd say there's probably a lot of clubs that are struggling
Yeah.
But I know numbers in downhill and SA are not what they used to be. I mean, there was sort of 300 people showing up to a race, 250 people showing up to a race when I was racing. I don't think they've done anything wrong. I think enduros come in and I think, you know, that gravity enduro thing is just that. It's the most pure form of riding, and it's also incidentally probably one of the most accessible.
Yeah.
And so you've got, you know, you got these riders who, you know, if they do want to race, they feel like they don't have to put everything on the line, and they can still show up to work on a Monday. And then the good riders can still do it. You know, it's easy to do. It's hard to do well.
Yeah.
And so it's just a lot more inclusive, I think. And so I think that shift in thinking, all of a sudden you can have a bike that, you know, has single crown forks and has 160 mil travel, and you know, various non-downhill specific aspects is all of a sudden so much, or like as capable ultimately as most downhill bikes. But then you can turn around and ride up, and so the time that you've got to spend riding is more valuable than it's ever been, and so you can have more fun with that. So yeah, I'm not sure if that answers your question. I think it's a really difficult question to answer in some respects, but
yeah, it makes sense. You know, people aren't always keen on being the fastest or keen on they just want to ride their bikes, and watching people do that inspires people to do that. Yeah,
there's so many more trail networks in Adelaide too.
Yeah,
that don't lend themselves to racing, but they do lend themselves. I mean, this is the capital of, you know, 30 minutes work to dirt. Like,
yeah,
it's, you know, this is what we love about Adelaide. This is one of the reasons we're here. Is because you can just, like, you can ride 4 trail networks in a day, and half the time you can link them up, and you can do it after work, and you're like, it's perfect in that sense, you know. Yeah. And you can have a surf in the morning, you know. It's
Where?
Water. We'll be
I guess like what a lot of people don't know as well is that you guys are working full-time jobs and you've got families and doing other things as well as doing this. How do you guys find the time to do what you're doing?
Usually it's like 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. That's the time.
Because his kids sleep at regular times. Mine's still up, and it's 9:34.
No, it is difficult to find the time. Fortunately, my wife's very supportive of this.
Likewise.
So yeah, it's good. And you know, I give up ride time as well to do it. So I think before I was doing this, I was usually getting in a midweek ride.
Yep.
But I don't know. Well, maybe I wasn't. I don't know. I used to think I was, but I'd try to anyway. Some winters, you know, get the lights going and get out once a week during the week and once on the weekend. But yeah, nowadays it's you know, 1 ride a week usually at the most.
Yeah.
But I don't mind, you know, it's I really enjoy riding, but I also really enjoy, you know, having a bike company and getting to do the things that I do. And there are probably so many people out there that wish they could do what I do. So I've got to, you know, make the most of it.
Yeah, for sure. And it must be pretty cool to be able to ride what you want to ride.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah, it is. And it's totally rewarding. And I'm always, you know, thinking, you know, I'd love to do the downhill bike or, you know, whatever other bikes I want to ride. But then I think, well, I don't really have time to ride, so I only need 1 bike. I don't know what I'd do with a downhill bike if I made one. Yeah. Because the days of shuttling with mates are pretty well long gone. But doesn't mean other people can't enjoy something I've made. So, yeah, that could be on the cards.
Yeah.
We'll see
what happens.
Dun, dun, dun.
And I guess coming back to the market and stuff like that, how hard is it for you guys to keep up with trends like longer reach and shorter, lower, longer, slacker, harder, faster?
It should be easier because we're like a light, agile company, but it's not that easy. We've got to sell all our bikes to be able to afford to make more bikes. So, if we can't sell bikes because they're not the right size or, have the wrong shock sizing or wheel sizing, then that really hurts us.
Yeah.
So we've got to be really careful moving forward to, stick with the right standards and try and future-proof what we're designing to make sure that things do get sold and we can keep moving and keep growing.
Sure.
Yeah, it's. I think it is a funny thing, and I think so many of those trends are probably, created by people in my seat, in a marketing seat in some senses.
Yeah,
it's your fault.
Yeah, it's my fault.
Seriously, $3 million.
So it's, but like they're business decisions as well. Boost is a classic. They needed it for a purpose, I guess, and it's obviously a smart business decision to make everything else use that same size, because then you only got to make one hub. One hub size, but so there's things like that. But is there any negative to previous trends? In most cases, no, and the parts are still available with things like that. So I guess moving forward, you've got to be as agile as you can. You've got to be as forward thinking as you can, but not everybody gets it right, I guess, and it's probably not sheep stations either.
Yeah,
if you don't necessarily change straight away, if you're not right at the front of it, you're not left behind. There's so much equipment out there, and like we talked about before, these bikes are built to do solid time,
and a lot of our customers buy frame only, which is predominantly what we sell, and they've usually got parts from an old build or whatever, their previous bike, that they can then transfer straight over onto this new one. So
actually works out
works
better
out
for a lot of people.
It's not that hard to convert parts or do things later on anyway. And you're kind of running a bit of a weird setup on your bike at the moment.
Just
trying to see what that's like.
I've got a 29er front end on mine. It's really, I've never had a 29er. Well, I guess I don't still. But I just wanted to sort of see what happens on the front wheel with a bigger wheel and how much better it can roll over the rocks and that sort of thing. It's it's better. It's made the front end of my bike a bit higher. The head angle's now like 64, which makes it a bit uncomfortable climbing. It kind of flops around, and it's a weapon pointing down in the rough stuff. But I might go back to 27.5 just to make it more like an all day. Back to what I was used to before. And it's what I've got on mine. It's a big wide front rim and big front tire, and it's kind of heavy. Well, I guess you notice the inertia of the wheel a bit more than a smaller wheel.
For sure. Sure. Do you have any plans to go 29 a full bike one day, or it's not really a?
Possibly, maybe not on the ENR. I mean, we get asked that all the time, and it's a valid question. But I guess people need to perhaps ask themselves what the benefits of big wheels are.
Mm.
They've got benefits in terms of rollover, you know, how they get up and over rocks and that sort of thing. But we've already got that with the rearward axle path to a much, much higher degree as well. So the benefit of going 29 is like tiny compared to the benefit of going from a regular bike to a bike with a rearward axle path. So
talking like just to put it in perspective, numbers of like 0.7% gain.
Yep. To
13.5% gain.
Yeah. Okay.
This is 13.5% gain, and it's not even possible to do that with this.
No, because you know, if you could fit a 900mm wheel, which you can't.
Yeah.
But you know, if you keep increasing the wheel size, your roll up improves, but the axle gets higher, the chain line gets steeper. You've got to mess with the axle path to get it to pedal the same, and basically it all starts to cancel out at about 900mm wheel size.
Yeah,
so,
right.
Yeah. So you get diminishing returns with going bigger wheel, but if you go with the rearward axle path, you get the gains for free.
Yeah, right. There you go. And I guess going on that line of thought, what are your projections, or what's the future for Craftworks? Or if you had an unlimited budget and
more bikes, more, you know, wider range. That's really what we're aiming for, but it takes time to get there.
Yeah.
I've got a number of designs kind of fleshed out, nearly ready for production, but we've just got to get, you know, get up there, and you know, it's not going to happen overnight. We've got to sell bikes to afford to make more bikes.
Yeah.
So that's
a fun path we're on. It's a fun problem to have, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, definitely keen to see what bikes could possibly be made. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. So during the week, I asked a few listeners a couple of questions. To send me in their questions. So might go through a couple of them if that's all right with you.
Yeah.
I've already touched on this, but a friend of mine, Ryan Knight, absolute weapon on a BMX. So he likes simple bikes. He does ride mountain bikes, but likes one gear and small wheels.
Yep.
He just wants to know, and we kind of touched on this, is why does the chain go like that?
Yep. So basically, it's because of the axle path that we have. With a regular bike that has a regular chain line, the axle path is pretty much vertical through sag, and then it starts to arc forwards after that. And that's basically because the designer wants to keep the distance between the axle and the bottom bracket kind of the same. They actually want to make it grow a little bit, but not that much. And there's actually a really small window of axle paths you can choose with a conventional drivetrain before the pedaling starts to get out of hand. So when we go for a much more rearward axle path like we've got on this, basically the distance between the bottom bracket and the rear axle grows significantly. So if you had a regular drivetrain on this sort of axle path bike, you can imagine every time you pedaled, it would want to pull the axle as close to the bottom bracket as possible, and it would extend the suspension, and basically every time you pedaled, it would try and top out the bike. So basically that's why the chain has to run over an idler pulley to kind of keep the chain growth in check to what makes it pedal reasonably well.
Yeah, right. So it just makes it pedal like a normal bike.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess to elaborate on that, you know, if he likes simple concepts, on face value it maybe doesn't look simple, but you never lose your chain. Your wear is significantly less. But chains last a lot longer. We're starting to get feedback from people who, you know, got on the bike as soon as it was released in 2016, the first release, and it, you know, they're saying, oh, you know, we keep checking the chain with measurement. And these are guys who are punching out big Ks, and they're good riders, and they're not seeing chain wear. And I guess maybe it's looks a little bit more complex, but it's a lot more reliable. So, and that's usually, I guess, why people go for simple bikes, because less goes wrong. They can be out there riding and they're not dealing with technology that's maybe not quite up to what it's boasting. Yeah. This actually makes your riding easier.
Yeah.
Climb better, corner faster.
All the cool things. Another guy, pretty dedicated listener, even though we've got 2 episodes out. He's been messaging me and
I'm
commented.
equally as dedicated.
I think Matson's got everyone covered so far. Tommy from Grey Zone, he's given me a few things.
Listen like every day.
Pretty much. I think he's I don't know. I think he's just in love with Cam, but
he's a lovable guy. I get it.
Anyway, JT MTBMX asked 2 questions. One was, do frames geometries get patented? Not the suspension system as such, but the geometries and frames. And the other one was pretty interesting. Why aren't there more Australian bike brands and manufacturers? So,
good questions. Frame geometries being patented. I don't think that would be possible. To be able to patent something, it's got to be novel, which means that no one has done it before. And there's got to be a thing called an inventive step, which means you've got to have there might be all these known concepts, and your idea has to be like significantly different and something that maybe a regular person wouldn't come up with. So in terms of geometry, which is really just numbers, we've got bikes with certain wheelbases or certain reach and certain head angles, to then change a head angle slightly or whatever and then say, I'm going to patent that.
Yeah.
The examiner would just say, any person could come up with that. There's not really an inventive step. And then the other side of that is that there's probably someone who's already done that before and documented it. So, so we probably wouldn't meet the criteria for being patentable.
Yeah. See the same thing with T-shirts. That's why I see so many Chinese knockoffs, is you can't patent a T-shirt. It's a T-shirt. And then, why do you guys think, there's you guys and Curve, I think, are probably the only 2 Australian.
Yeah.
I think Built are around for a little bit as well. And
it's not. You shared a classic video with me that I think was on Pink Bike.
Yeah.
A little while back, and it was basically, can any idiot with a suitcase full of cash show up in Taiwan and start a bike brand? And it's probably the most in-depth yet succinct middle finger to that concept I've seen. Yeah, it is. There's a lot that goes on, certainly that I wasn't aware of.
Yep.
You can take it from here.
Well, dealing with I guess there's a few that have tried local manufacturing. Certainly for the boutique market, people, there are frame builders, road bike frame builders, or hardtail frame builders. That there's definitely a market for that. People are willing to pay big money for a boutique custom made frame. So I guess that's an industry in itself. As far as more production type bikes, there's been a few that have tried local manufacturing. Paying Australian wages to weld frames is not going to result in a bike that you can sell for under $5,000. Definitely. There's a lot of hours that goes into making a bike frame. So that's why we get it made in Taiwan, because, well, firstly, they're they're the world experts at making bike frames. So, and secondly, we've been using the factory that we're using since Craftworks began. So we've got a really good relationship there. It's probably very difficult for a new company to just start up and go to Taiwan and introduce themselves to a factory and say, hey, I want to do this. To do the networking and talk to the right people, but B, to sort of know how to manage that process and how to deal with things going wrong or that type of thing. It's you'd really need to spend time over there first before you decide to do something, or spend time in another bike company and learn how they do it, and then go out on your own. And maybe we just don't have that opportunity here in Australia. It's probably different in the States. There's a handful of bike companies there you could probably do an internship at, and then get your head around how they do things, and then go out on your own. Whereas here it's I'm fortunate that it kind of fell into my lap and I was able to pick it up, but I don't know how I would have done it otherwise. Very daunting to,
It's just a scary prospect for a lot of people, I guess. So, then you have money on top of that. So
well, that's the other thing, isn't it? It's very expensive to run a bike company.
Cool. And there's a couple of questions I just want to ask pretty much every guest, trying to build a bit of a thing. What would you say to people that are trying to aspire or do what you guys do?
I have had someone ask me this. Well, I've had a few people ask me this. And my response is a pretty boring dad response. But basically,
get a job.
Get the best education and the best job you can get.
Yeah.
Get something that gives you a good income. Then save your pennies and then if you find yourself in a comfortable position, then start playing with bikes. It might pay off, it might not.
Yeah. It's one of those things where to make $1, you got to spend $999,000 or whatever to make it.
Yeah, we do. We kind of joke that if this doesn't work, we'll never have to buy a bike again.
Yeah.
But the irony with that is that, I mean, without sounding like a twat, the way these bikes are lasting, we're going to die with a lot of frames in the shed.
I don't think that's going to be the case. But And what about marketing and that type of thing? What would you say to anyone that wants to get into that side of the business and do what you're doing?
That's I had a job once, and I was told by several people that I had the best job in Adelaide, and they might have been right. I'm not sure, but it certainly took its toll on me at a fairly particular part of my life, I suppose, and I made a really conscious decision to just do what I love for the rest of my life, and that sounds like a pretty outlandish, ridiculous statement, and I'm definitely aware that like everybody has bad days, but I think if you wake up too many days in a row thinking, man, I don't want to do this, what I'm about to do, and everybody's got a different number. For me it was probably 4, but that's a hard decision to make, but I think you learn a lot from doing that. So being for me, being driven to just to do what I love, and I get to do that. I get to play with bikes every day. I get to make a lot of films. I get to deal with interesting people and learn stuff about technical things, which is just what I love. Might not be what someone else loves, but I think if somebody wants to get into marketing in the bike industry, I would say, have a go. There's a million different ways. You can be an influencer. You could tee up with somebody in the industry, but I think the important thing is to find something you like and start asking questions, start making inroads. You're going to come across a lot of dicks. You really are. But they're everywhere. So I think if you gravitate towards good people, don't try to take, try to give, and you'll probably get a lot of people who will take for a while before you find one who gives a bit back, and that's where that's the path, that's the direction, that's the navigation, the game of Frogger. I don't know. It's a You just got to be. You got to want to do what you love, and I think all of us have probably at a point where we've sort of hit rock bottom in terms of earnings or whatever. And honestly, I think that's where good ideas are born.
Yeah,
it's certainly where all my good ideas are born. That in the shower.
Yeah, now everyone's thinking of you in the shower. So.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen.
Now, kind of
ladies and gentlemen.
That's getting cut. And like, I guess the final question and something I'm trying to maybe create a bit of a Spotify playlist and tie this into something. But what do you guys listen to get amped and go out for a ride, or when you're on a ride, or
take it away, you. Captain Gent.
I'm a bit of a metalhead. So I listen to extreme metal. I guess tech death metal or black metal.
Yeah, cool.
Stuff like that. So it's
it was a long drive back from metal. And I thought I liked metal. But.
Basically anything like fast or tech or brutal is it's good food for the brain.
You got any bands or anything that specifically that you'd like to jump onto?
At the moment, it's a couple that are coming to Adelaide in May. So Rivers of Nile and Beyond Creation.
Okay.
From States and Canada.
Yep.
But yeah, pretty keen to see them. Both tech death metal bands. So
yeah, that's sick.
It's looking forward to that.
It's going to blow a few people's ears away when they come up on the playlist. How about you, Jordan?
Ready for my pop list?
Spice Girls?
Tay-Tay.
Damn it, I love Spice Girls. I do. No, I have a massive... I have a super wide, varied interest in music, but if I had to say what I'm listening to now, do you know, I've actually been... I take my family to Warm Adelaide every year. We take each other to Warm Adelaide every year, and I got on to people might remember 1200 Techniques. The Enfer is in a new, like it's relatively new thing called Cool Out Sun, and just had a cracking time listening to them. So look, I'm actually probably more of a punk and hardcore kid originally, but I probably I listen to a fair bit of country and blues and all kinds of stuff as well. Cool Out Sun's probably getting a fair thrashing. Definitely Nothing But Thieves.
Yeah.
Is a bit of a those guys are doing great things, and oddly enough, there's a Queensland country guy called Brad Butcher who's just like this incredible storyteller. There's no way I would have said a country artist if you'd asked me a year ago, but there's a whole nother story behind that. But another podcast.
Could be an interesting playlist with hip hop, country music, and thrash death metal.
Do you get to put the order in when you make a playlist? I reckon you should put like the softest song and then just put some like epic. Psychroptic or something.
Oh, definitely. It's going to happen. Rad. No, it's going to be a good playlist, and thanks for your contributions. And I think we can wrap up the podcast there. And thanks for all the information. It's been a mind-melting episode. People are going to get real tech on it, and we look forward to seeing what you guys do in the future.
Cool.
Awesome.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks very much, mate.
Easy, guys. Cheers.
Cheers.
So that was episode 3 with the guys from Craftworks. Pretty heavy episode, pretty long episode. So I hope you got a lot out of it. As you can see, we definitely had a good time with the Sweet Amber Ales, and there was a lot to be said about the bike, about the company, and how to start business and get into it. And I hope you learnt a little bit from this. Over the last couple of days, I've had the opportunity to ride the ENR, their flagship enduro bike, and I have absolutely loved it. Originally, I thought this bike might be a bit of black magic, will be a lot of marketing, and there's probably not that much really going on with it, but it has done exactly what they say. It has eaten up all the bunts. You could throw it out. All those sharp rocks just disappear for a 27.5-inch bike. It just eats up everything, especially in the rear end. It's phenomenal. A bike I'm riding comes with a clapped out pike from a demo bike. It's a bit rough. It's got a Monarch R on it. It's not the best, but the fact that this shock is so average in my eyes, and the bike still performs amazingly is definitely a testament to how good Hugh has designed this bike. And I'm not doing this because they're paying me to review it. I'm not doing this because I'm mates with them. I truly will tell you if this bike is terrible, and anyone that actually knows me knows that I will down something if it's shit. But this bike is truly good. Now, before I had ridden the bike, we were talking about floating the idea of sponsorship for the podcast, and that really did ride on how well the bike performed. I'm not going to put the name of this podcast. I'm not going to put my name to a product that I don't truly believe works. I'm not going to amp anyone up. I'm not going to give out lollipops and say that they're going to make you perform better. I'm definitely going to want to be behind something, and I am 100% behind this bike. It really, really rails. It's super fun to ride. It's poppy, yet it's stable. It's just a really, really cool ride. Sure, there might be some improvements to be made somewhere. I'm not 100% sure where yet. As I said, I've only had 2 days on the bike. But I really enjoyed it. So in saying that, the big news is that they're going to come on and be a sponsor for this podcast and for myself. And what they're doing is they're going to offer 10% off to any buyers that are interested through seeing it on my Instagram, seeing it on Beyond the Tapes Instagram, or listening to this podcast and becoming seriously interested in the bike. So they will have a purchase code of BTT minus 10%, or I can put you in contact with them or mention my name and we'll be able to sort you out. Obviously, if you see me at a race, or if you see me at a national event, or see me anywhere on the bike, just ask for a ride. I mean, I'm a heavy bloke. The suspension's probably going to feel terrible for 90% of people because it'll feel rigid for them. I am a fat bastard, so it will feel hard, but you'll still be able to understand how the bike works. Now, as an honest review, as I said, this bike just eats up everything. The idler pivot, or the idler, just makes the pedaling really, really efficient in the top end, but I've noticed even in the middle stroke to the end stroke, it doesn't seem to want to kick or do anything if you're pedaling through some rocks. It just seems to work all the way through its travel, which is something on some 4-bar linkages I've never been able to work out, and I haven't ridden too much single pivot bikes to really notice any difference. But this one definitely works. It pumps through stuff really efficiently, and as I said, it just cruises over all the rough, sharp edges better than probably any bike I've ridden that's not an e-bike and doesn't have an extra 10 kilos to push it through. So I really truly believe it's the rearward axle path over the fact that it has an idler pulley. The whole reason it has that idler pulley is because of the rearward axle path. So all these brands with their high pivot points, the high pivot point isn't the marketing part. It should be that axle path and how the suspension works. There's really only one way to skin a cat, and I can put a high idler pulley on an FSR bike. It's not going to really make it perform any different. So, but what they've done with this bike is truly incredible. So, as I said, they're going to come on for a sponsor for this. I'll be promoting their product, but it's because I truly believe in it. Now, I will be building up my own bike with a few different parts, obviously, and tuning the suspension in a separate kind of episode, and I'm working on something special for that as well. But yeah, definitely get in touch with me, get in touch with the boys, and ask them questions, because they're going to know a lot more than me. But as I said, this bike rides amazingly. It's efficient. It works. Get on it. Just ask me for a ride, ask them for a ride, and I think you'll believe what I believe. So that sums up that episode. The next episode is going to be quite good as well. I'm pretty excited for that. And then I've got a couple of big guests lined up for later on in the year as well. So I'm truly excited to where this podcast is heading. I think of covering a few avenues that haven't really been covered before. So yeah, it's been really good. And lastly, I'd just like to congratulate Cam, the last guy, for finishing up EWS Rotorua, making it through the whole day and absolutely killing it. So well done, buddy, and well done to everyone else from SA that's killed it and Australia that's killed it. So I look forward to hearing from everyone, and don't forget to comment on iTunes, comment on Instagram, follow me wherever, Instagram, social media, workplace, home address, wherever you want to follow me. So thank you very much, and see you for episode 4.